I am going to turn this over to Representative Dan Noyes, who has been working very hard on some broadband issues at the virtual State House. So I'd love to hear what's been going on there. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, Bjorn, Phil, and David to talk about some availability, some resources that they might have. I think it would be good to hear what some opportunities that their companies or their agencies may have for us. And then let's just do some chatting together as best we can with this large group around how we can, what are some challenges and how maybe some of us, Ryan, Bjorn, Phil, and David, or any other of us could work together to collaborate on some solutions, especially around social isolation. Just one quick thing I just want to say, we started this coalition a year ago in May, and we've met only a few times. It's been a very big group involved. And then, of course, our conference, our V4A conference, was in September with the theme of social isolation. And we haven't met since then. And I felt this was really a great opportunity because of COVID-19 and because of the concerns that we have around older adults and social isolation, that this would be a perfect opportunity and a perfect topic for us to discuss. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to you, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate the invite, and I wish I could stay longer. This is really some important stuff that you're talking about around social isolation and amongst older Vermonters. So thanks. I can tell you that we had this CRS funding, which is the Corona relief money that we had to allocate into different pots that we sent over to appropriations. And one of the proposals was to include some technology funding to help older Vermonters connect to the internet, whether it's devices, access to paying for the internet connection, and then technology support. Unfortunately, it didn't make the cut in the Human Services Committee, so I'm sorry to say that that didn't get included. It was a very brief process. We basically, the committee members pitched their proposals, and that was not one of the ones that was able to make it across the finish line. However, so that's tier one, and that was $50 million that the Human Services Committee had. There is money in there so of that 50 million, that's tier one. There'll be a second round called tier two, depending on any more federal stimulus money that comes through for revenue replacement. So we could have a second shot at it from the Human Services Committee when we come back in August or September. With that said, so this proposal now goes to the House Appropriations Committee. They're going to look at the proposal that we put forward from Human Services. And then it goes off to the Senate, where the whole process happens over again. And they'll look at different proposals and how the money should be allocated. So there is the outside chance that the Senate committee would take up this proposal around providing funding to help with technology to senior centers and to older Vermonters. So it's not over yet. Another legislative issue that's been on my mind and stuff I've been working on for a long time, as well as many of others who are on this call, is the Older Vermonters Act. And I'll just touch briefly on that. It's been on what we call the notice calendar for a long time, and it keeps getting pushed back. And we thought, Teresa Wood and I, who's been an amazing advocate, we thought it was going yesterday, and it didn't. We're hoping again for Friday. We've been having some conversations with the chair of our committee, Ann Pugh, as well as the speaker, trying to get that taken up. They've really been prioritizing any direct COVID relief legislation, even though that the Human Services Committee actually took the Older Vermonters bill back into committee, and we made some changes to make it more relevant in this time. So there is a bunch of COVID information, and we're in that bill, but it hasn't been taken up yet, and hopefully it will be on Friday. I got my fingers crossed because we're kind of running out of time to have the Senate do anything with it. And just briefly, there's a bill that we passed out of the House, and that is H958. And this is changes to communication union districts that I think would be really helpful in making sure that there is access to internet in rural communities where this is probably going to be the social isolation, and where we could probably use a lot of the new technology if we had access to broadband and to internet. So that right now passed the House, it's in the Senate, and it's in the Senate Government Operations. So if anyone feels like they want to write the chair of that committee, how important that is, that would be really good to see that move forward.
Can you repeat what that number is, please?
Yeah, it's H958. And I can, yeah. So I think that passed the House already. Like I said, it's in the Senate. And that allows municipalities to form communication union districts without a town vote. So it allows the select board to form a communication district or join a communication district without a townwide vote, although it's just form one. So it's playing out in Morrisville, Johnson, Hyde Park, Waterville, Cambridge, Belvedere, where they want to form one, but they would have to bring together the municipality in a townwide vote, and that's not really feasible in this time. Just in closing, and I'd be willing to answer some questions here, yesterday we passed the mail-in voting where everyone's going to be sent out a ballot. Just, I know a lot of older Vermonters will benefit from that without having to go to a central polling place, as they've been all told. You know, the message is to not go to central locations like that. So just we'll leave it at that. Also, back to just real briefly, I had just pulled up some numbers on the final for the CRF money coming out of the Human Services Committee, and Meals on Wheels funding at $2 million, adult days at $3.3 million, and nursing homes at $5 million. So those are some of the funding that would help older Vermonters. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Dan.
If anyone has any questions, be glad to answer them. I got until 10:30 when I have to be in a
All right,
meeting.
Dan, I want to start off. Can you tell us a little more about the broadband work that you've been doing with the legislation in terms of how that really gets down to the individual, the older adults that we're all working with, and what advantages, if there's a positive outcome with that, what could that mean for older adults?
Yeah, so in terms of providing access, you mean around that CUD issue, or around trying to find out if we can provide some CRF money to senior centers and AAAs to provide that technology, which is, or
either
all of it?
One. Just tell us whatever you have in your brain.
So one of the things that I'm interested in really looking at is, in order for these communication districts to have the capacity, to have what they call, I believe they call it take up, and I think you have some people on your call that can probably talk to it better than I can, but access to allow these communication districts to provide internet service, they need to have enough people in a neighborhood or on a line to make it worthwhile. So running that last mile. And I've often said that, there must be a way that we may be able to, tap into some other sources of funding to help older Vermonters who normally would not have the financial capacity to, get internet. They wouldn't apply for it. They wouldn't pay for it every month, to help them get the internet so that there could be more take up of service, so that it would be economically feasible to run these fiber optic cables the last mile. And, you know, one of the things is with the CUDs, which is a communication district, it's almost, if you could think of it as a school district where towns get together and create a communication company, if you will, that would help run those fiber optic cables or internet the last mile, and not have you know, it would allow them to apply for grants. It would allow them to band together and you know, figure out how to run that the last mile. So that is something that we passed last session. But now, in order to create these, it's obviously been seen that the federal dollars that are coming into Vermont are going to be more, they're going to be allocated to municipalities that have one of these CUDs in place, because that's going to be where that funding will be used up or be able to be spent and to help the most people. So. You know, it's not only older Vermonters, it's, you know, you go up to Belvedere, you go to the school, that's the point where people have access to Wi-Fi. There's cars in the parking lot with kids trying to get their homework. So, you know, as we move into, you know, the homeschooling this year, we could really see some problems with access to internet. Johnson, Belvedere, some of the towns I represent, I heard a lot that, you know, people don't have access to the internet.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Dan. Does anyone have other questions for Dan?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's Joanne from Senior Solutions.
Hi, Joanne. Don't apologize.
Hi, Dan. I really have two questions. One is the communication district that you're going to be encouraging towns and villages to develop. That actually means that the cost of putting in those last miles of accessibility for Wi-Fi falls into the lap of those communities, correct?
So those communities can apply for grants, they can receive federal dollars. You know, it basically allows them to build out the last mile without looking at the profitability of providing service to that last mile.
But what if they don't get, but if they don't get the grants, or they just don't have the money in their little town budget, they still won't have Wi-Fi?
That would be correct.
Okay. My other question is regarding the mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
You know, we went through this with the census, trying to get the people that are isolated, living in the rural area. Many of them do not receive physical mail from the U.S. Postal Service for a lot of different reasons. Is it possible for the V4As to get additional mail-in ballots that we can encourage our clients to call our helplines and so forth, and then we can arrange to get them their ballots, maybe through the case managers or something?
Very interesting. There was some discussion and debate yesterday around organizations and mostly political organizations having access to ballots and how that could pose some problems. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. You can vote as if you normally would. So if you show up on the election day and say, I would like to vote in person, you'll be able to do that. I think you could call your town clerk, and a justice of the peace can bring you a ballot. I am not sure that a case manager could pick up somebody else's ballot and bring it to them under current rules, but I am no expert in this one. But you do raise a good point.
A good way to deliver it may be through the Meals on Wheels system, because we're talking about people who don't leave their homes. They can't do a lot of things. And one of the things they can't do is get up and go vote.
What a great recruiting thing to recruit JPs to help deliver Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne.
I would like a little guidance on that.
Yeah, good
Joanne,
question.
that's great.
I'll look into it.
That seems like an important topic that we should just focus on that in terms of the voting. Any other questions for Dan, especially around older adults, broadband, and social isolation? Martin?
Yes, Dan, thank you for joining us. I saw an earlier draft of the broadband proposal, and it was suggesting at that time to lessen the 100 over 100 standard. Do you know what final standard was proposed? And my concern being that anything less than the 100 over 100, particularly for telehealth, probably would not be very effective.
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure. I know that there's been some discussion in Energy and Technology Committee. Maybe some of your guests that are coming up later might be able to answer that. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for if they've changed that, although I can reach out to Representative Sibilia. She and I talk quite a bit. So I would be able to get that information back if that's something that you wanted.
Yes, I would actually.
Yeah.
And if you can advocate in any way, I would suggest to keep the standard as it is, because it was designed for a reason. And even on calls like this, we can see people coming in and out. And that's a result of not necessarily having the appropriate bandwidth that will be required if we are trying to also perform telehealth with the idea of having a face-to-face encounter.
Yeah, no doubt. I totally agree with that. I think they were trying to look at the feasibility of small municipalities being able to run that last mile and what can be used as cost-cutting measures. But I definitely agree that we need to make sure that if we can run fiber and get that 100 up, 100 down, that that's where it should be, what we should try to get, and not some of the 5G or the other technology that may be able to run that last mile that does not provide the same level of internet.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, because what happens is everybody's sharing the same line. So what might be 25 and 3 for what they're proposing is being shared down the line through everybody else. And you get to the end of the line, you're probably only getting maybe 1 or 2 up and down. So that's the reason. That's the thinking behind that.
Yeah, and I'm on it here in Wolcott. I'm on a DSL line, and by the time it gets to my house, there's not much left if my neighbors are watching Netflix.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jason and Martin. Any other questions for Dan?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. And, you can connect with Janet if anyone wants to send me a text or an email. I can answer as many questions as you want or try to. And we'll see what happens with the CRF money in the Senate. Make sure you talk to your senators on appropriations.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thanks for your advocacy on our behalf, our older adults.
No worries. Have a great day. I got to jump on my next one now.
Okay. All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. So let's just take a look here. Great. I'm glad Dan could get on. It was a kind of a last minute thing for him. So I'd like to take the time now to have Ryan, Bjorn, Phil, and David talk a little bit about what they're able to offer perhaps for services and supports that we may not be aware of. And then after their discussion, their overview, we can talk about some of the challenges that you folks have all seen as you're trying to work with older adults in Vermont. And perhaps Ryan, Bjorn, Phil, and David have some possible solutions. And then let's just see how that conversation goes from there. So Ryan, would you, we can't see you, Ryan. You're not going to show yourself today? Please introduce yourself.
I am here, but yeah, if you'd like, I can actually turn. Let me see if I can turn the video. I joined via phone, but let me see if I can put it on. There we go. How about? Can you see me now?
All right, Ryan. Yes, we can see you now. We can
Great.
hear you.
Well,
we can hear you now too. So please introduce yourself. Tell us about what AT&T has been able to offer for folks.
Yeah, well, thank you just in general, Janet. You've been a great partner, and thanks for having us again to kind of talk about what we've been up to. I think one of the first things we've done specifically in Vermont, as well as just including a buildup of our network, which I'll get to, but focus with a real heavy focus on older adults. We worked with Janet and V4A to provide a seminar on older adults and the use of technology in general, and getting individuals more comfortable with using technology and using their phones, using devices, and also how to stay safe online. So I thought we had a really good first run of it a few weeks ago with some good participants. I'd like to do more of those, both in Vermont and across all of northern New England, which is territories that I cover. I cover New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, and I'm based in Manchester. But so I think that's one of the things that I'd like to see us continue to expand. But we had a good first go at doing a seminar for older adults and how they use technology, because now more than ever, as we all know, they're using it more often, and we're all using our devices more often. So we want to make sure we're using them properly, safely, we're avoiding scams, and we're comfortable using them. So in addition to kind of our older adult tech days, which if you have any questions about, be happy to go into further. And as I mentioned, we are looking to try to do more. So if anybody has any interest in that, I'd be happy to discuss that as well. So in addition to that, we're really having a heavy focus on our network. As everybody can imagine, the networks have seen a doubling, in some cases tripling of phone time, calls, data usage, and Wi-Fi calling. They're all going up a pretty significant amount. And the network's holding up well. Obviously in Vermont, there's a lot of areas that are underserved that we've already been talking about. We've been working with the governor's administration with his call to really beef up and build up all of the network and connectivity across Vermont. This month, and last month, we're having, we've had at least 2 towers come online. So we're continuing to work on processing our towers and getting those processed as fast as possible with the PUC. We also have a bill that is hopefully, as Representative Noyes mentioned, there's another session on Friday that we're hoping to get passed on Friday that'll help expedite our ability to bring connectivity to Vermonters. So that's something that we're really working on doing. And that certainly helps with isolation, making sure that everybody has the opportunity to connect. Through that, we've just got a lot of new additions. So we've been working with a product that we've been having with the federal government called FirstNet, and it's ideally designed for public safety, but where it comes into play in rural communities in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine is it's a network that has to cover everywhere for public safety. So we're going into communities that we're typically wouldn't have gone into, or many commercial users really weren't there. So public safety is everywhere. So we have to go find them and support their networks everywhere they are. So through FirstNet, we're really building out in areas that we wouldn't have normally. So that's another big step for us, and hopefully, networks don't build themselves overnight, but we're working to expand them and hopefully have better coverage in Vermont as we go forward. And we believe the network has significantly improved over the last 3 years in Vermont, and we're going to continue to do so. Additionally, we have all of our retail stores have been open this whole time, and I know older adults are not necessarily going into those stores, but I would encourage all older adults to continue to call stores if they have any questions, even the basic questions. So I think that that's something that we can do to help out with isolation. I know all of our stores are very well versed at that. So, if they just have any even basic questions, if their phones aren't working properly, if their devices aren't working properly, encourage everyone to just call the store. They're there to be helpful. Additionally, we're also developing new products that'll hopefully bring people out of isolation sooner than if we were just tracking through a vaccine or something like that. We're developing thermal cameras that locations, particularly big locations, can put up that can track people's body temperature, so that we know if somebody has a certain temperature that they will be turned away from either a store or a location. So that'll certainly help bring our communities together a little bit quicker. Contact tracing applications as well that could be implemented by the state to help, track obviously individuals who have been in contact with COVID-19 to help keep individuals safer as they venture back out into our communities. But I'll end there so I can, either answer questions now or however, Janet, you want to run it. But, we have a lot going on, and, whether it's through donations as well, phones, donations of devices, or just general donations to schools so they can, purchase things or acquire things. So we're really doing a lot, and we're open to a lot of ideas to help our communities.
Excellent, Ryan. Thank you. I'm going to hold off on questions, and we'll just get a run through of these other three folks. Thanks. That was great information. Bjorn, you want to go next? You're from Technology for Tomorrow. Tell us about what your company does.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Bjorn and I work for Technology for Tomorrow. And we are a nonprofit organization that works on the grassroots level. And I would love, by the way, to have Ryan's contact information, because I think that there's some amazing opportunities for us to connect with Ryan and AT&T.
Wonderful.
Some extremely good grassroots work.
Yes,
Please,
definitely.
Janet, if you can send me Ryan's contact,
yes,
I can connect with you.
I'll share everybody's
We're doing some
contact.
really great things that I think we would even do better with a corporate partner.
Great.
So we work on the grassroots level. We do technology education and training for underserved communities, primarily new Americans and older adults. So AARP Davis here, wonderful partner. H. Well Martin is here, wonderful partner. We work with Cathedral Square. They were supposed to be here, but they're not. They couldn't apparently. So we physically go.
Melissa's here from SASH.
Oh, SASH. Okay. Oh, hi. Oh, there you are. Hi. There you go. Hi. Yeah. So we have some really wonderful partners. So we our strategy or our program is based on before COVID-19. So we have a before and an after, right? So before COVID-19, we primarily provided programs. We physically went to senior homes, whether it be Cathedral Square or an independent living, to do group workshops and one-on-one tech support in apartments, in community rooms, and also to senior centers like the Heineberg Senior Center, Thayer House, whether it's living, Winooski Senior Center, Essex Senior Center, Champlain Senior Center, so on and so forth. So we go where seniors live and meet, right? And what we have seen, just to give you an idea of data of numbers, older adults have dropped from half. So we served approximately 90 people per month for tech support and training per month. Since before COVID-19, during 2019, okay? After COVID-19 hit, we only put our programs online. So we have gone from about 90 people we serve per month to about 120. So our participation rate has gone up. However, the number of older adults have gone from about 50 per month to 9 per month. The number of new Americans have gone from about 50 per month, 45 per month to 0, including older adults. So we're seeing is an enormous drop in participation by older adults and new Americans. Also, that includes older, new American older adults. So we're seeing a couple of things. I am getting phone calls, and I've gotten phone calls on a very regular basis from senior home coordinators, SASH coordinators in different senior homes, by senior community centers, saying the same thing. We are desperate. We are totally desperate. We need help to engage older adults in programming. And we're finding a couple of things. Number one, they don't have access to devices. Number two, they don't have access to the internet. So hardware and the internet are two major obstacles, right? So T4T, we don't do that. We just don't have the resources to provide that. So we would love to be able to work with organizations who can help with hardware and internet to be able to provide that. What we do, which is what we're working with several organizations on as we speak, is to basically recreate the programs that we had physically in the buildings, right? Whether it's tech support, workshops, or even sort of a virtual senior activity center online, right? To start connecting people. However, we're finding some very concrete challenges, okay? So this is very labor intense and we're a pretty small organization. That's why I'm reaching out and say, this has to be sort of like it takes a village to solve a problem, right?
Right.
So what we're finding is this, okay? So I work with senior home coordinators and SASH coordinators, and also senior community centers, right? A lot of seniors who have Wi-Fi at their location where they live, let's say at a senior living, right? They don't know how to even access Zoom. So what it takes, this is just to tell you how sort of labor intense this process is. We are working on having to make phone calls. I literally set up next week on Tuesday, I think it is, I have a group phone call with a group of senior citizens and a SASH coordinator at a senior living facility to see if I can on the phone talk people through how to install Zoom on their telephone so they can access video, and then do the same so they can access video if they have a laptop. So many times we just find that they have a device, but they can't even use a video feature. So that is sort of one challenge. Then I'm talking to a senior citizen activity center, and they don't even have devices. So sort of the challenge is pretty massive. And I think there's an urgency to solve it, right?
Yes.
So I think getting together as a larger group with corporate Vermont, nonprofits, smaller, larger, has to be done.
That's why we're here.
Exactly, yep. So I really appreciate this opportunity to present. So our goal in Technology for Tomorrow is to present and offer clear solutions. So we're working on those clear solutions, but we're also limited in what we can do. And therefore, we want to bring in other stakeholders into the solutions that we believe are realistically possible to do here in Vermont to connect people. And a lot of times it comes down to, I'll be honest with you, it comes down to funding. So we can only do so much, but it comes down to finding sponsors, funders, organizations that have grants that are willing to fund these opportunities. And that had turned out to be a little bit more challenging than I was hoping for. But I'm still very optimistic that there's going to be somebody or a pool of stakeholders to step in to want to help, because we can do the work. We have ideas. We have a lot of connections we can work with and actually put things in place. But we also need some form of funding to sort of like put in the work, because it's very labor intense. Okay. So that's why I would love to connect with Ryan as well and see what can be done.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you,
Janet.
Yes, we'll get back to you with some questions too. Yep. Phil, I'd love to hear from you around what you've got for assistive technology.
Sure. So for those that don't know, I'm the director of the Assistive Technology Program for the state of Vermont. It's a federal grant that's been around since the 90s, which we're charged for the number of core services. We're available to all Vermonters. There are no eligibility requirements. There are no paperwork that needs to be filled out. And what we can provide in terms of services, information and awareness about what assistive technology is, how it might benefit somebody with a disability or an age-related condition to improve their general living, work, play, life. And we do run a loan program where we loan out assistive technology, including iPads. We have a library of iPads that we do loan out. Unfortunately, we've suspended that for the time being because of COVID. We simply haven't been able to get into the offices and make sure that our sanitation protocols are adequate to what we need. I anticipate that we'll be starting that up again before too long. You know, obviously the wider national community of assistive technology organizations are all facing the same problem, and so we're all, you know, having those conversations about how can we make this work going forward. You know, that's a little bit about what we do. We also, we will demo devices for individuals, so they might see how they work and if they will help them or not. And as far as supporting organizations, we have just a sort of a general 1 hour presentation on what our program is, what assistive technology is, how it can help people, you can request that at any time. That's a free service that we provide. We'll present to your organization. We'll do it virtually at this time. That's fine. We can also, if you have very specific needs around a particular type of assistive technology, we can develop specific trainings. That is a fee for service that we offer. We've had some success. We ran one on switches, like how to work with switches for those that have mobility issues. We have a lot of iOS accessibility experience within my small team. They could certainly work with you all to help develop something that might work with your clients, to help improve the isolation issues. Like you all, this is it's a rapidly changing situation, and we're learning so much very rapidly about how to be effective at this. And I've recently just saw a study out of Italy where they realized that actually giving devices to people was making some situations worse, because they were so frustrated by the inability to learn the technology that it was actually driving them into what was the word they used? Hypokinetic delirium, and they would actually refuse to eat or leave their bed because it was just so overwhelming. So, I feel for you all, and we're trying to learn as best we can along with you. That's really what our program is and has to offer. I'll throw up our website. It's the easiest way to get in touch with us and request our services for your organizations. And we're always available to share our expertise with you.
Great. Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you.
David, we're happy to have you here from AARP Vermont. Tell us a little bit about what you folks have been doing in terms of social isolation and how we can get involved.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Janet. Good to see a lot of familiar faces here. Unlike some of your organizations, we're not a direct service organization, so our focus, as you know, is more around education and advocacy and outreach. A lot of the ways we reach our members is in-person events, and of course they've been canceled. Now, latest word is they're canceled for the rest of the year. So, like others, we've had to turn to virtual offerings, and there's a few ways. I mean, I suppose a lot of the things we're doing with Zoom and StreamYard and Skype are familiar to you all. One of the more unique things we do, I guess, is teletown halls, and we've been doing those monthly, which is an outbound calling process to all our members. We have 120,000 members in Vermont, so we have a big flock. That's about 65,000 households. Now, we don't have phone numbers for all of them. We don't call all of them, but probably about 30,000 we reach out to with outbound calling and invite them to participate in a conversation around a particular issue. The way it works is it's very much like the format of a radio call-in show, and we have a guest. The last guest we had was Peter Welch and Dr. Levine, our health commissioner, around COVID. A few weeks before that, we had the entire congressional delegation, Senator Sanders and Leahy and Peter Welch, as well as Dr. Levine. And we've had Monica Hutt on as well. So they say a few words, give an introduction, and then we basically take questions from callers. And it's a way to reach, anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 folks, depending on how long they stay online. They don't necessarily stay for the whole hour, but it's a great way to reach a big group on a particular issue. Some of the issues have been frauds and scams related to COVID. We've worked with the AG's office and their CAP program on that. Had some great calls. And obviously, since COVID, it's been around health issues. It's been around scams related to health or to the COVID, and what's happening in Washington, what the legislative federal response has been, what the state response has been. The governor has been on our teletown hall. So that's one of the things that's a little more unique. We actually just did a webinar around accessory dwelling units in Burlington. We had 65 people on a WebEx, which had technical problems, unfortunately, but it was talking about some of the regulatory hurdles of establishing accessory dwelling units in Burlington. Some of those regs have been lessened, so that was one of the reasons for doing that and encouraging that activity. In terms of isolation, and we've also worked closely with the Technology for Tomorrow, who've been a terrific partner on the training side and developing some recorded webinar material, and as well as delivering some live hands-on training around social media in particular. And I think we may be doing more tech training going forward, but we've really worked with them for years, and Bjorn and Vijay have been terrific. And we've actually done direct. I think we've done 6 hands-on live presentations around Facebook and around Twitter, as well as some recorded offerings that are posted on our blog. We've done some Facebook Live presentations. I think the piece around around trying to help folks with isolation, while there's lots of resources on our aarp.org website, what's been developed since COVID came upon us is a resource called Community Connections, and this is something that any of you, where appropriate, could refer folks to. It's aarpcommunityconnections.org, and what it is a way for folks to go to this website, and it will direct them. They can plug in their town or their zip code, and it will direct them to mutual aid groups. And those are local groups all around the state, all around the country, that provide, a friendly voice phone calls, provide grocery delivery. They basically serve, the most vulnerable folks that are out there that can't get out. They provide tech support, emotional support, fitness options, and again, they're local groups of volunteers that form to serve that population. And Community Connections is a portal for folks to find those groups in their communities. So that's something that I'd really love to share with you all and have you push out to the extent you can. Again, it's Community Connections at aarp.org, or I'm sorry, aarpcommunityconnections.org. So those are, I know, a few of the things we've been working on at this point.
Good. All right. Thank you, David. Well, let's start with some questions. Does anyone have questions for Ryan? Ryan of AT&T.
Hi, Ryan. This is Tracy Schamberger from Age Well. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I did have a question, and I was wondering if when you're working with any organization that serves older adults, have you seen programs or contracts come in that are funded by any particular grant organization or foundation? I'm just wondering, as we're all thinking about how we're going to implement, particularly after Dan spoke perhaps about lack of funding, what you've seen out there in terms of, I know there are probably funders, and I was just wondering if any have come across your desk that you've seen that we may be able to capitalize on.
Yeah, in terms of grants, I haven't worked with a whole lot of organizations that are promoting grant funding for network build out right now. But, we're always, we rely on fiber also. And so what Dan is working on is really interesting to us because we rely on fiber to run to our network towers, our big cell towers, and then those cell towers put out the signal for everybody. So, we're a big supporter of using, some of the CARES Act funding that's come through. I know Vermont has, drawn up some proposals on how to use that funding to build out broadband. And so that's important to us. And, but I haven't seen specific grants, but like I mentioned, the CARES Act funding and using that for broadband, I think is something we certainly support.
Any other questions for Ryan? Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Questions for Bjorn and Tech for Tomorrow? Martin.
More of a comment. So we have been working with the Bjorn and VJ for over the past year on a variety of items. One from New Americans, New American program that we were able to establish last year that I thought was really successful. So anyway, I just wanted more endorse their services and which I think have not been fully taken advantage of.
Good, thank you, Martin. Any other questions? Sue.
I'm with Care Partners Adult Day in St. Albans, and we've been doing virtual adult day services, which include Zoom activities. And I'm really particularly curious, as you mentioned, we too have been having a huge issue in terms of getting people onto Zoom, and we have been trying to kind of work with them. Staff have actually gone out while doing social distancing and other things to help people to kind of be connected. Are there some resources that you have in terms of things that you found that have been helpful? We put together instruction sheets, but I'm not sure, whether there's something better out there.
So we did for the AARP, we did a webinar with sort of like screen videos, literally videos from the screen, right? So we presented that. So the AARP sent that out sort of step by step, how to install, how to run it, how to do the different features, and then you can certainly do. What I found though is, and I work with the Voc Rehab with a client in St. Albans as we speak, that people have anxiety, and this is really a major barrier for a lot of older adults, and this is where it takes human interaction, human relationships. It might be easy for some of us to just watch a YouTube video or a webinar, and then from that just pick up how to do something, right? But with the population, an older adult population, we're finding is for many, just watching a video gets intimidating, right? So there has to be some form of interaction. So I'm working with, and that's why we're going to have a phone call next week with a group of older adults in order to try and see, can we do the interaction? Even though they watch something, we still need that interaction. We can talk and discuss, and then can we get on Zoom from a phone call? And I'm working with one client, with the Voc Rehab office up in older adults up in St. Albans as well on the phone, who has anxiety about technology. So I think we're looking at really a couple of groups. One that's pretty savvy already. You can give people a seminar, a set of instructions. And I don't think that group necessarily for older adults is in the majority. I was just, based on my experiences working with a lot of adults, that seems to be the minority of the group. A lot of older adults that might get access to broadband or devices over the next few months or years, depending on what happens, they are probably going to be pretty anxious about using technology. So those people require much more labor-intense work, meaning a webinar is not going to do it. It is going to have to be, at this point, with when people are at home, it is going to have to be phone calls, maybe train the trainer to deliver a train the trainer model, but it's really based on starting with a phone call to a few individuals and talk through how to install something. So I can just tell you what we've done, just so you sort of know how we are reaching people. That actually has a major, major impact, but it's very labor intense, but it makes a difference in a human being's life, right? So the lady I'm working with is about 60 years old in St. Albans, has technology anxiety, right? So I'm just going to give you a human story here, okay? And she didn't want to even, all she said, I'm willing to try a phone call. Started with phone call, that's it. So I've spent 2 hours on the phone. We do phone call a week for an hour. And the phone call was, for me, we talked, and we were able to help her through the phone call install Zoom on her telephone, right? Then she was able to start using Zoom. So I told her, I can't email. She doesn't use email. So I had to talk to her, give her the meeting ID, where she just punched it in on the phone, right? Once she got on the phone, she has a laptop at home that she never uses. Her husband uses it, but she doesn't want to use it. Then she took her phone, aimed it at the computer to be my eyes, and then I talked to her through the Zoom on her cell phone, how to get to Zoom on her laptop so she can then access Zoom on the laptop, so we can now engage in other training as well. But that's the sort of the labor intense work that we're talking about. But it does make a difference in a person's life. And she is not in the minority, I believe. There are a lot of older adults out there that will have the very same needs. And I can only reach so many with the resources that we have. But this is the group that really is the isolated group. So if we're talking about people in isolation, that's the isolated group, because those are the ones that don't even want to touch the cell phone or anything right now. And those are the forgotten ones, right? So just to give you a story about a human impact story and the labor intense work that needs to get done on the grassroots level that legislation really can't fix, that we have to solve on the grassroots level.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's interesting. And it seems as though you can't do it alone, obviously.
No. And that's why I'm reaching out. We need partners. We need resources to be able to do this work. But if we want to make a difference in people in lives, this is where the work is right now for a lot of older adults.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of volunteers, that
Right.
if we could train volunteers to do what you've been doing,
right,
that might be a way to go. Any other questions for Bjorn? Okay. Questions for David? David with AARP. Melissa, you had some.
Yep,
You
Janet,
had one.
I'm wondering, David, where can I find out information about the Zoom town hall meetings that you're hosting? Because we have a calendar of events that we share with all of our SASH staff, and then they could disseminate it to our participants.
Sure. Actually, I just answered your chat. Actually, we promote it primarily on social media because it's a direct dial to our members. We don't really need to push it out to them per se, because we're calling right into their home. But there are others who want to be sure they're home at that time. So primarily either email or social media is where we promote it.
Okay.
But I can let you know when the next one is coming up. I actually have one June 23rd with an FBI agent who covers Vermont to talk about some of the scams that are out there around the pandemic and how folks can protect themselves and what to look out for. So that's 4 o'clock on June 23rd. And it streams live as well on our Facebook page.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions of David? Okay, how about questions for Phil? Phil, I had a question. I wanted to ask you about the tablets that aren't available right now because of COVID, but I know from experience that older adults are often frustrated with just trying to figure out how to turn on a tablet. So are the tablets that you provide different than what I use, my iPad, or are they easier to figure out for older adults or people who are challenged by technology? What is it that you're offering for tablets?
Sure. So the short answer is no, they're not different. The longer version, though, is that we do, because we specialize obviously in assistive technology, a lot of times what we're getting is a request, not just for a tablet, but for a tablet with specific apps for conditions. So, for example, we have a whole setup of apps for augmentative communication, and what our program will do is we factory reset essentially the iPad, load up the apps that are most beneficial to the client, and then send it out and allow them 30 days to try it out and see if it's a solution that's going to work for them. No, they're just standard iPads.
Okay.
Not to get too technical in the weeds, like there's some stuff we could do to lock them down, but we don't have the tools yet to do that. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions of Phil?
Yeah.
I was going to add to that. I think Martin's going to jump in what I was going to say, because we kind of are on the same wavelength. So is there any way that you guys, that we can consider maybe doing a MDM, a mobile device management deployment of some of those devices so that they're pre-configured and can be kind of deployed with kind of a, like everything's there already and we can push out apps to those devices? Is that what you were going to kind of jump in with, Martin?
I was actually going to ask slightly differently, what is the list of apps that you're using? Because I would be curious if that's something that we could further use with some of the devices that we're setting up in the future. But MDM is another item that we're looking at. Actually, AT&T as a possibility with at least the phones, but want to look at that with potentially iPads as well.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you drop me an email separately and I can get you the list of the current apps that we have. I just don't have it right on my fingertips, and we're always adding to it. But I'm happy to share that with you. It's not like this is secret information. And in fact, it's probably, I haven't checked recently, but on our AT for All website, which is our device loan website, and you can get to it right from our main website that I sent the link to. I'm pretty sure that they're all listed on our AT for All. So if you were to search for iOS apps, I think they would all come up on there. But feel free to drop me a line, and I'm happy to share those resources with you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. And as far as MDM, it's been on the AT wish list for a long time to get a mobile device management solution. Without getting too in the weeds, I used to work in IT for the state before I took this job, and IT solutions for the state are always a challenge. And so, but we're hopeful. We're hopeful that we're going to get something. And then, yes, I mean, that is our ultimate goal, is be able to, you know, it not only allows us to push out apps, but then again, it also allows us to really lock down some of the features to keep people from going off into the weeds of areas where that they might find themselves unhappily, you know, with an unhappy experience with a device. So,
well, and just so you know, Phil, one of the things that we've been looking at in discussion with actually AT&T has been to potentially, if we were to use their devices, they do have MDM solutions that could be added to those devices. I guess my question would be, at a state level, knowing that there is a contract with the state and with AT&T, you know, might there be some collective pricing opportunities for having a bundled tablet and MDM solution? So Ryan, maybe that's something you know, you could look at as well.
I just have to ask you folks, for those of us who may not be familiar with mobile device management, could you please explain that a little bit further?
Sure. Go ahead.
I can give you the short version. Basically, it allows you to control an inventory of mobile devices. So think of, if we had a lending library of 10 iPads, they get registered in the system, and then we have an administrative piece that allows us to turn off certain settings, to track the device if it goes missing, to essentially turn it into a brick if we feel like it's been stolen. We can also push out specific apps from our admin. So the user doesn't have to go through a lot of the how do I install, how do I set up the app store, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it provides a management piece.
I see.
You know, any corporation that puts out devices tends to do this, right? Like, because they want to know where the employees are doing them. So it's just a common thing that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just don't want us to lose ourselves in the technology language.
And it's one of those things that if we do it right, you don't even have to know what it is. So
yeah, right, of course. Any other questions of Phil? Great. Okay. I would like to spend the next few minutes then talking with folks, asking folks to talk about, let me just pull my, please check your chat, folks, in terms of any questions or comments that folks have had. So challenges in connecting I'd like to hear from maybe Area Agency on Aging staff or Melissa from SASH. Any challenges that people are having with regard to medical health, case management, and social interactions. And then maybe based on those challenges, what solutions you've found, or it's an opportunity for us to listen to folks about some things that we need to fix in terms of helping with getting telehealth to folks, to getting connected around telehealth, but also social distancing. So let's just have an open conversation with everybody around that topic, those topics. I guess I'll start with any Area Agency on Aging if you'd like to share some challenges that you've experienced. And if you haven't had a solution, that's fine, but it will be good to hear what you're stuck with. What are some things that maybe we could help resolve together?
Hey, Janet, this is Erica.
Yes, Erica,
so
go for
although
it.
we have 1,300 volunteers, we are not doing.
That number just keeps going up.
Yeah, it does. We are unable to do any face-to-face friendly visits at this time. We're unable to provide transportation to medical appointments. We're unable to take people to the grocery store. This is all, of course, because of COVID, right?
Yep, yep.
So here are some of the things that we're doing. One is we did recruit volunteers specifically that are willing to go grocery shopping for clients using no contact protocols. So what that looks like is the volunteer puts together their list and their form of payment. Sorry, the client puts together their list and their form of payment. When the volunteer arrives, the volunteer calls and says, I'm here. The client then puts that outside their door. The volunteer picks it up, goes to the grocery store, comes back, puts the groceries outside the door, goes back to their car, calls the client and says, your groceries are here. So that's one example.
Cool.
We were very worried about our Meals on Wheels clients that were in senior housing facilities where there was a concern about there being an increased risk for COVID. And in order to serve those clients, we hired a professional driver that delivered a week's worth of meals at a time, that wore PPE. And in order to deal with the social isolation piece, we recruited from among our volunteers. We had 97 volunteers that stepped up and said, okay, I will call 3 clients 3 times a week. So those clients who were not getting a daily delivery anymore, we had phone volunteers that were calling and checking in on them.
Nice.
Our senior companions are not allowed to do anything other than simply do friendly phone check-ins with their clients. And there's no way around that yet because they are part of that identified vulnerable population. So there'll be more to come on that in the future. And then one of the things that we've done is we're about to launch a new program called our Phone Pal program, where that is for folks who want to develop a relationship with someone that will call them once a week, to have an extensive ongoing relationship and conversation. So for our older clients who are used to being pen pals, because even in grade school, even I, you know, that was part of what we did in grade school was we had pen pals. Well, this is a phone pal. And so as our care and service coordinators are working with their clients, as they identify clients that are socially isolated or depressed or who could benefit from some additional support, they are making a referral to our volunteer program, and we are doing our matchmaking wizardry and matching those people with phone pals. So those are a few things.
Excellent, Erica. Thank you. Very cool.
Janet, can I ask a question of Erica?
Of course.
Erica, you said it's an ongoing. Is this is there any end date to the program, or it's just for the duration? Can you say more about that?
Are you talking about the Senior Companion Program?
No, the phone pals, sorry.
Oh, so the phone pals, we just launched it, and we're piloting it for a year. And at the end of that year, we will evaluate how successful it is or isn't.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Erica. That's really great stuff that you're working on. Let's see, Jennifer, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you want to share? You want to share anything around what Southwestern Vermont Council on Aging is doing related to challenges that you have or solutions that you've found?
Yeah, so very similar to what other people have mentioned. I mean, obviously the whole COVID pandemic piece has kind of limited our ability to do certain things, but thankfully, you know, our case managers are still functioning at full capacity and calling our clients on a regular basis. But then we also have we've been able to recruit a good, robust group of people volunteer-wise to help with things like grocery shopping. We have a grocery shopping program that's very similar to what Erica had described, as well as a telephone reassurance program. So essentially very similar to what was just talked about. We actually launched that a few months ago as a way to help increase social connectedness for our folks. And that really is a volunteer connected to a client that is calling them on a regular basis, sometimes to just have a cup of coffee together over the phone, you know, engage in some sort of socialization on a regular basis. And it's another set of ears for folks if we need to kind of relay anything back if the client is case managed. So that has been really just, those two programs that have been amazing as a backbone to help support some of the inability to engage in direct contact with our clients. You know, it's an interesting process because we have certain clients that are very much wanting the social interaction, and then we have a cohort of clients who are very, very much still afraid of social interactions, even with social distancing and using you know, PPE and those types of things. With the adult days being closed, it's presented another challenge around social isolation for those folks, as well as that not being a resource for some of the caregivers that need respite. And so some of the things that we've been able to do is partnering with our adult days and providing some of those technologies to identify clients that have verbalized the desire to have certain types of technologies, whether it's an iPad, a Amazon Fire tablet, with certain accommodations. You know, some people need bigger screens. Some people would like a keyboard because of the touch capacity is not working great for them. And so that has really allowed a good group of people to be able to connect with adult day services in a way that they wouldn't normally be able to do prior. So again, through Zoom, some socialization groups. So that's worked out really well. We've been able to use some of the CARES funding to purchase those items for clients. Some of the challenges really are just the pragmatic pieces of, you know, coverage folks living out in rural areas. I remember working in Virginia, and even back then, outside of a pandemic, I would have clients that had a bundled package through a company like Comcast or another provider, phone, internet, and television provider. They'd have a full bundle. Had no idea that an internet was even included, but we're paying for that. And then when they realized that, I was usually the one to have to call and kind of get that remedied. So mainly because of just people not having any real idea on how to engage and use and monitor. There's a lot of fear around exploitation, possible scams, and those types of things. And so really, the way, from what I'm seeing is I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to increase services and knowledge and teaching, and I think volunteers are going to be key in this way, because the labor force, or the how laborious it can become for someone like a case manager who's going to be going out. I mean, they wear multiple hats already. IT can't necessarily be one of them. So we need to figure out a better way to utilize our volunteers. And I know we have plenty of tech-savvy volunteers that are kind of waiting with bated breath to be able to start helping in that capacity once we're able to kind of do the face-to-face visits.
Good, that's good. It makes me think that, there's such a population that we still are not reaching, that still don't have internet, that can't see. I don't know if Lynn's on here from Front Porch Forum yet. She said she would hopefully join us, but Lynn, are you on here? I see a couple of phones. Well, Front Porch Forum is a wonderful, avenue, as we all know, if we're connected to Front Porch Forum. But if you don't have internet, then you're not connected. So it made me think that, what if we could get our companies to put some sort of a notice in their bills, in people's paper bills, and maybe that's a goal that we could work on.
Janet, one of the other challenges really is an economic challenge with some of our older Vermonters who are very much on a tight budget. And so a lot of this funding right now that's available to connect people to internet, if they have broadband capability in their area, is not really a sustainable thing for them on a long-term basis. It's another bill that they're not going to be able to shoulder the burden of. And so that's an additional challenge that we see down the road.
Yes. Yep. Speaking of bills, right. And I don't mean legislative bills. Thank you, Jennifer. That was really good. Carol Stamaticus, I see you're on, and I know Joanne is. Is there any information you'd like to share, challenges or solutions with regard to what you folks are doing at Senior Solutions?
Oh, we'll probably talk at once. Joanne oversees Vicky, who Vicky Mastroianni, who manages our Friendly Visitor program. And I'll just say a few words about the technology, but Joanne's been working very closely with Vicky, and that program has dramatically expanded, recruiting a really enormous number of new volunteers, as well as using some of our existing volunteers to do things like the shopping and the phone calls. So that's been really amazing, but I'd like her to talk about that. I'll just jump in on the technology piece, and we are in the process of developing a program for helping isolated older adults get connected. We've already helped a number of Choices for Care clients based on funding we already had. And then when we received the COVID relief funds, we decided to allocate, some of those funds to a program whereby we would help people get devices, get connected, as well as get education on either using their new devices, or we're finding a significant need for people to get assistance with using what they already have and troubleshooting. So that's a significant piece of that. And Phil at the end, his colleague, Phil, remind me of the name of the woman who was so unbelievably helpful to us.
Did you speak with Tracy?
What's her last name?
Tracy Rue.
Yeah. She was phenomenal. I talked to her for like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, so I would really encourage that program. One of the things that what we're planning to do is assess needs, use some volunteer support, not for, complicated technology, but for the kinds of basic things that any of us might help our parent or grandparent with. So utilizing or leveraging either, case managers or volunteers who are already helping people to help, utilizing programs that exist, things like the Comcast program that provides a discount to certain qualifying low-income people. So essentially, we're going to try to identify what programs exist now that can provide either free or discounted services to qualifying people so that we can connect them with those programs and maximize, how many people we can then serve. And then we're also developing a network of people, most of whom we've already worked with, people who have expertise in different aspects of technology so that, we can help identify the best device for people, help them get connected, and then help them troubleshoot in terms of using the devices and services that they already have, as well as developing educational programming as well. So this is a work in progress and not something we've had funding for in the past. And so we're doing our best to meet the needs while developing the program. And I hope Joanne can weigh in on the some of the other pieces because she's been just very thoroughly involved in that.
Thank you, Carol. Joanne, you want to?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to talk about. Can you hear me?
Just barely, Joanne.
Right, come over.
Okay.
Yeah, Carol did a pretty comprehensive job, but just to let you know that right as soon as the COVID-19 hit, Vicki and her team made arrangements with all of our visitors, both in friendly visitors and our vet-to-vet program, to make arrangements with banks who we discovered could be the ones to help. Many of the clients don't have checking accounts, they don't have credit cards. So arrangements were made to help facilitate our visitors when actually picking up groceries and prescriptions and things like that. And I have to say it transitioned very smoothly. We put the word out that we were looking for people who were not of the vulnerable age to help boost our volunteer corps. And we got an immediate response, unbelievable, which helped tremendously. And Vicki, of course, is instrumental because she knows how to train, support, and thank our volunteers. And that is so crucial.
Good.
So, right now, I think we've got, we have about 37 home visitors. We just enrolled 3 new ones this week. So this group is growing. We're spread off around a pretty large rural area, Windsor and Windham counties. But we are working really hard now to break more up into the Upper Valley. So we're probably going to have some more good news later this year.
Good. All right. Thank you, Joanne. Jean Kern and Mary Hayden from Central Vermont Council on Aging. Hi there. Is there anything that you two would like to share?
Yeah, this is Jean.
Hey, Jean.
Our volunteers switched their service, really pretty much mirroring the services that the other AAAs have mentioned, how their volunteer programs changed. One thing that we've done as well is that for the agency itself, our SHIP program offered on a monthly basis or several times a month throughout our service area, some classes called Medicare and You for people who were new to Medicare. And our caregiver support director offered classes called Powerful Tools for Caregivers, as well as Caregiver Tea, sort of a social interaction for caregivers. And since no one can meet in person, they had to switch gears and learn how to offer those programs via Zoom. And what they found, though, interacting with participants, is that not everyone was on Zoom before. So there's been a lot of work on the behalf of those folks to help participants figure out the technology and how to get on. Now, I know that it doesn't reach everyone, but for those who have technology but just weren't using it in that way, we've actually reached larger audiences than we had before when we were doing in person. And but we're realizing that just the labor intensity of helping people who want to participate in these types of classes be able to either acquire the technology or to figure out how to load the different programs on so that they platform so that they can take advantage of the classes. And we're finding that true with our wellness volunteers as well. They led many Tai Chi classes or other exercise classes in person, and some of them have transitioned to using Zoom. Again, it's reaching those who have the technology, so we're well aware that although it's reaching some, it's not reaching all, but on the flip side, we're also finding, though, that many people who were homebound and weren't able to participate in some of these events are now able to participate because we're doing it online.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you, Jean. Mary, was there anything you wanted to add to Jean?
Well, I think all of the AAAs, all of the councils on aging have really adjusted to serving our clients and the public, given what current technology is available to us and to them, including the phone, by the way. Let's not undervalue the phone. I think, though, what we're facing, all of us, and those were great summaries about what we're all doing, and I think we're all pretty much doing the same thing. But I think what we're really facing is the unknown. So is this well, first of all, do we prefer in-person contact no matter what? Is that a value? It's a discussion I think that's going to be very relevant in our new world. Or some combination that people are saying, well, because everyone's using more technology, we're going to keep using it. And how do we serve people under that paradigm in the future? This is obviously a 6-month problem. Is it a year-long problem? Is it 18 months? Is it 2 years or more? So we don't really know where we're heading, but the biggest issue is how do we leverage the resources to do this?
Right.
We got the bad news from the House Committee on Human Services this morning that older Vermonters didn't make the cut for that money. We'll see what happens in the next tranche, if there is a next tranche, and whether Senate appropriations can come up with something. But we have so many older Vermonters who can't afford the devices, can't afford the services, and this is a recurring expense. This is something that devices have to get replaced, or they break, or they stop working, and we all need help with and managing our usage of technology. I know at CVCOA we made the decision to we already had a need for better tech support internally for staff. So we are going to hire someone, but one of the things they're going to be tasked with doing as well is which is new and different, is serving our clients with technology needs as well. Mm-hmm. But I think we really need to be thinking about what resources are we going to be able to leverage here. And can we partner with, whether it's industry, can we partner with health providers? They have a huge stake in telemedicine here. Will they be able to leverage funding to provide devices? So I think, I think we're all doing the best we can with what we currently have, and so are our clients, and so are the public we serve. But we really need to talk about leveraging resources in a very serious way going forward. Is the way I see it. And I also wanted to add one other observation. We've underestimated the technical abilities of a lot of our population. So as Jean related to you, we've had a ton of people participating in our Zoom workshops, many more than who come in person. And so this is something else we have to adjust our thinking about. The baby boomers who've been aging for a while are very versatile and can use this technology, and we can reach them and continue to, and we can't forget that. So those are just some of my more bigger picture long-term observations.
Good, thank you, Mary. Mel, how are things going in the Northeast Kingdom?
Well, basically, as you all know, the Northeast Kingdom is one of the most rural parts of the state. It's also one of the most unserved as far as broadband goes. We have tremendous challenges with broadband in the Northeast Kingdom. We also have a tremendously poor population. So in retrospect, you know, the Council on Aging, we just basically couldn't go see people, but we still continue to serve clients as best we could, doing most of the adjustments that have already been mentioned. Our TeleFriend system was in place since 2016. So we were very fortunate to have that already in place when everyone couldn't stop seeing one another. A lot of our wellness leaders turned over into TeleFriend helpers. But the one thing that we are seeing a lot of is the internet and device usage is important for social isolation, but it really comes down to brass tacks with some of these families. A lot of our seniors are supported by their younger daughters and sons who all of a sudden had to become teachers for their own children. So the family dynamic here in the Northeast Kingdom had shifted tremendously to a lot of hardship for families where the most important thing was just getting a phone call or just getting food, not necessarily you know, worrying about getting mom to use Zoom. A lot of our families are really, really struggling here in the Northeast Kingdom. So it affected far more than just our seniors. We've got a lot of young families that have lost jobs. That affects them taking care of family. So we're really, really focusing on, our caregivers are really focusing on, you know, just the core requirements to keep people safe and to keep families connected, to keep families with getting the information that they need in order for them to, you know, get through this. It's really only been 3 months, but it feels like 3 years to some of these families. So, you know, we're working to help train as many people as we can. And I agree with, I think it was Bjorn who was talking about how labor intensive it really is to try to train people on how to use Zoom over the phone. It really is kind of, it's a lot easier to meet with them right in their living room and take them through it. But that said, we have a lot of wonderful volunteers, and I'm really encouraged across the entire AAA network of how many volunteers have stepped up during this crisis. We have really seen a tremendous influx of volunteers. We just asked and they signed up. So things are going well, but because of our location, because of our ruralness, you know, the Northeast Kingdom is 2,300 square miles. It's bigger than Rhode Island, and this Northeast Kingdom Council on Aging is 25 people covering that size. So it's a challenge. But I was also really discouraged to hear that the funding didn't go through today. Comparatively speaking to the level of demographic and the size of the demographic for seniors in Vermont, how critical that is. So just putting it out there.
Thank you, Mel. Just a couple more people, I think, and then I would like to get us to begin to talk about some outcomes and some goals that we'd like to accomplish together. I think that we've got a great pool of resources here, great pool of people to work with and companies. So Melissa, how's things going with challenges and solutions you've found with SASH?
Thanks, Janet. It is pouring at my house, so hopefully you guys can hear me and not the background noise. I just wanted to really echo what Jean and Mary were saying. We've found some really great success with Zoom. and actually have had more people turning out to some Zoom bone builders classes that have been offered than did in person. So definitely some lessons that we want to learn and carry forward from, you know, what came out of COVID. Other things that we've been doing that have been pretty successful are hosting a Facebook Live event with chair yoga and mindfulness. And for people that aren't on social media, we've also had many across the state offer Resident Connect phone calls. And these are just meetings via phone where they've done everything from have fun events such as bingo, that they've sent out the bingo cards in the newsletter, or educational series with our wellness nurses, trying to keep everyone still thinking about their health and well-being while they're isolating at home. And then also just some more informative updates about what's going on and keeping people up to date. Our SASH coordinators and wellness nurses have been touching base with all of our participants regularly. Some people have even said that they've been able to grow the relationships that they've had with certain participants that maybe just didn't engage before, but since they're calling them once a week, they've really built some relationships. And they also are completing a COVID needs assessment with all of our participants, so that way they can really know who's in need of what, and that way as resources become available or as they hear of opportunities, they know who to reach out to. So it's certainly been different, but I think that we are managing pretty well and have learned quite a bit over the last few months. So
thank you, Melissa. Yeah,
Janet, can I ask a quick question?
Of course, Janet.
Melissa, are the SASH coordinators doing anything face-to-face at this point?
Hi, Janet. Great. Thank you. Good question. They hadn't been until really about the beginning of June. Some had been on site once a week throughout the whole thing. But as of the beginning of June, depending on where they're located and if there's any community spread, we have allowed people to go back in, and some people are going back in full time, some are going back in part time. A lot of variables, such as we have a lot of older adults that are our SASH coordinators and wellness nurses.
Yes.
Childcare is absolutely an issue for a lot of our people as well. But we are even at this point starting to look at maybe having wellness nurses being able to take some vitals again, which has been a big lapse for us in the last 2 months. We haven't been able to get those vitals. So we're hoping that we can start doing that now, and there are definitely some sites that are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bjorn, did you have a question for Melissa? You have your hand up. Your virtual.
Oh, there you go.
hand.
Yeah, no, I actually just had a comment on somebody said earlier to connect with maybe companies that do telehealth. I can't remember who just said that, and I'm on my cell phone now because I have to teach a class in a few minutes. I'm just going to say that I'm actually working in a state across country, virtually, obviously, with a program sort of similar to that, to work and collaborate with older adults organizations and healthcare organizations to provide training on their healthcare portals and Zoom in order to sort of like get older adults to be able to do it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think here in Vermont, I think being a small state, I think it should be pretty easy to get that work done, actually. So I think that's a great opportunity right there. But then again, a lot of people who need that service and want that service are the ones that don't have access to devices and the internet. So things kind of go hand in hand. Just wanted to have that comment.
Sure. Well, let's jump into that. Let's talk about some, through this discussion, I'm sure folks have, or perhaps before we even came on today, have some compelling goals that you'd like to accomplish together that I certainly think we've heard today that we need each other to work together on accomplishing, getting some positive outcomes and positive results. So I would like to engage this group to continue to work further, to meet again. Of course, I want us to make sure that we'll be able to have, we'll be able to do this in a way in which that we'll be able to have some outcomes. So what would be some outcomes that this group could work on together? Some goals that you'd like to have. Bobby, you have your hand up.
I had to unmute. You know, I wanted to just briefly, because a lot of people don't know me, I'm formerly an elder care clinician in Washington County, and I'm a private practitioner for therapy, and I have been provided teletherapy. One good news outcome is that HIPAA kind of relaxed some of its guidelines so that we, and most of the insurance companies, they're all reimbursing for either telephone psychotherapy services or video like this with Zoom or FaceTime is allowed. I mean, they've really helped make it accessible. And, you know, I think I echo everything. I'm so happy to hear about all the services. Most of my clients, all of them, no, I just got a new one, but most of them are 60 and over. They're still in the same bracket that I served as an elder care clinician. I want to give a plug for the mental health agencies too. They've already converted over and they're doing a lot of teletherapy, telehealth. So don't forget, if somebody's really anxious, really having a hard time, don't forget to contact the mental health agencies and see what's available, but they're doing the same thing as everyone else. You know, I think my goals overall, as I service people mainly in the Mad River Valley, you know, all these things, the technology, especially if there isn't going to be funding, you know, I'm hopeful that maybe in the second tier, they will be able to address it again. But that's been one of the biggest issues as I've contacted people. I mean, one woman, I never even got started with her. She was so terrified, and I talked to her on the phone. We tried to get started. You know, it's not great to meet a therapist on the phone for the first time and not see them. My clients that I've had longer, I have one woman that went into complete hysteria over this, and I finally just said, we'll just do it on the phone. Don't worry about it. But her equipment isn't good. Her connection isn't good. You know, that's hard. And I think working together and, you know, the phone companies, you can get help online, but she has no money to spend on equipment. So, you know, getting those kinds of things in place and finding what resources there are. Transportation continues to be an issue. And now with COVID, like the Mad River Valley had purchased a car, freewheeling, but they're not giving rides. They can't take people in the car. So figuring that out. And the other big need, as usual, helping the caregivers, whether it's Alzheimer's or just, you know, that somebody's been getting a lot of help from family and now the family isn't able to go or they're afraid of exposing their family member to what a young person in their family may have brought in. And I also wanted to put a plug in for the houses of worship. I know that JCOGS in Stowe, that's the Jewish synagogue in Stowe, so that's Lamoille County, but the others as well, have really reached out, and we have a program. For instance, someone mentioned, you know, younger families as well, and I have a little boy and his mother that I am in contact with, so that I can do a friendly phone call with them. So not forgetting those houses of worship and the spiritual leaders and what the churches and synagogues and mosques and everybody else are doing to help. So really tapping, you know, getting more of that and tapping into it. But I'd be happy to be here with a mental health perspective. And the other thing I'm hearing a lot about is Zoom fatigue, both from practitioners and from the
all of us
clients themselves. You know, just can't fit in one more meeting.
Right.
And the overwhelming impact. I will also give a plug that the Tri-State Collaborative is going to be doing a session, I think it's later this, I haven't written down, but, and it's called Maintaining the Balance, and it's during the COVID pandemic. But last night I'm going to be one of the panelists, and it's also going to be Susan Weary, and there's another woman coming in to talk about mindfulness. I think she's from New Hampshire. You know, and I started looking up, okay, maintaining the balance during COVID, but, you know, the same practices that we have for maintaining our balance, emotional and physical. And so I'm going to be addressing kind of my experience with people. So that I just recently moved my sister here from Florida, and she's in this bracket and she's going to be living in a rental in Facein, completely isolated. She doesn't drive. I mean, I'll be there 12 minutes away, but you know, there are going to be other things we want to get going. So increase, you know, the volunteers, making it feasible. And I'm willing to volunteer some time. I already do. So
good. Thank you very much, Bobby. That's cool.
Okay.
That's good stuff. So let's hear from anybody who's got some suggestions around what are some next steps or goals that we want to try to tackle specifically connected to technology and devices. Martin, I knew you'd raise your hand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, one, this will echo what I said last September at the V4A meeting. And that is the premise to all of this, is that we do have connectivity in the state. So before we can do anything with technology, we have to have the connectivity. So as a number one initiative, I would argue that getting broadband access is something that we really need to figure out in the state before we can move forward with technology.
Yeah.
That's one. Two is I think it's going to be a growing concern as time goes on. Completely agree with Mary earlier in her analysis. I don't know if she's still here or not, but I think in the next 10 years, the expectation will be of people who are currently using technology and are growing into this population, that they will be expecting the technology as opposed to having it be something we're just quickly trying to assemble and put together. So I think that there's an argument there for the growing population change and those expectations, and hopefully we can use that to our advantage to provide that capability. And I think in terms of devices, one thought would be to see what we can do to leverage devices that are no longer in use, perhaps devices that are being recycled to AT&T, Verizon, the state of Vermont, and other users of technology, where maybe we can recycle those to give to people. So I think that's another avenue we could potentially explore.
Good. Thank you, Martin.
You're welcome.
Hey, Sue.
I just wanted to add to that. I mean, I think the connectivity piece is really very, very critical. But the other thing that we've encountered with our program is, again, the affordability for folks. And as I think a few people have mentioned already, people being able to afford this, sort of for the internet service. And I just had this thought, it's been 30, 35 years or more that the state has had telephone lifeline, where it was helping people be able to maintain their phones and that piece of it. Maybe the time has come that we are really needing to look at that there are, fees within our bills that make it affordable for people to have, low-income people to have the internet access.
I like that. I echo that idea and even television, these cable packages, when somebody's company or companion is a television and they're paying $90 a month for some kind of cable package, it's just, we need to address those fees and bring them down for people who need the discount so that everybody has access.
Any other outcomes or goals?
The one other thing, if we're going to train volunteers to provide technical assistance to clients who are trying to learn how to use a cell phone or an iPad, it would be really nice if we could share that training, because otherwise each of us is going to be developing it, which is silly. And it sounds like, Tech for Technology may already have this down, but if that could be shared with all of us, I'm happy to roll it out to my volunteers who are willing to serve in that capacity, but I don't want to have to develop the training if it already exists.
Yeah, you got a big thumbs up here from Janet Nunziata. Let's ask that of Bjorn. He's got his hand up anyway. Bjorn, what do you think? Could we maybe as a first next step get together, any of us who would like to anyway, to put together a training package to train those volunteers to get people connected?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that just really quickly. I have to go in like 2 minutes. I have an online class to teach online to kids around the country. Anyways, so so it's interesting. Most of the work I do now is not teaching older adults in Vermont. It's teaching high school and middle school students in other states online. I'd love to spend more time working with Vermont, actually. But what I think is needed and important is we need to streamline and coordinate. Because I'm hearing a lot of great things. I had no idea what's happening. It's like, wow, this is happening, right? Great. Really cool stuff. It seems like we're recreating the wheel. And we're not sure what other people are doing. And I think there's a lot of waste. We're doing great things individually, but then we're not really knowing what other people are doing. So somebody who might have devices doesn't know where to deploy them. I know where to deploy them and putting the program in place, but I don't have the devices, right? I think that coordination and streamlining has to happen. So we start pooling resources and are really efficient in using our time and resources that we spend, right? So the answer is yes. I would love to participate in sort of putting the training piece together. We'll have stakeholders say, here are some organizations we can get some, because I know I can deploy resources. I know exactly where I can go already and do it like today if I had them and deploy training. I just don't have certain sort of stakeholders with me yet. So if we can create that sort of that path, you know, and participation among stakeholders, then the training program would be, we have much in place already actually, because I'm doing things all over the place in Vermont and other states too, that I think would be like, that's kind of like out of the box we can take and sort of and work with and use. It's just a matter of sort of having the capacity to do it, being able to deploy hardware to people who need it so we can actually engage them in the training needed with the programs that we already have. So absolutely, yes, we would love to do that.
Okay, terrific.
I actually have to run, I'm so sorry.
Yes, I know you've got children to teach across the world.
Yeah, kids in California.
Okay.
There we go, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back
absolutely.
in touch with you for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Janet, I had a question. Since the Assistive Technology Center also has a fee-for-service program where they can do train the trainers and things like that, can we also find out what they would offer as a possible partner to develop a training program for staff? We were planning to do that, to go that route and get more information on that. So if you wanted to do that, you know, as a group, that would be great.
What do you think about that, Phil?
Yeah, we're absolutely willing to consider whatever you need. It's more, you know, just what's the specific area you want to hone in on. And if you all can agree to that as a group, you know, right on the website, you can just request that we develop that training for you. We'll have it back and forth with you and figure out exactly how to meet your specific needs. You know, it's a vast field that we're talking about in terms of devices and applications, and, you know, so making sure that it's as focused as possible so everybody gets the benefit is important.
And so Ryan, thank you, Phil. We'll connect with you and Bjorn maybe to put something together. And Ryan, I know that you have provided training to individuals. You and I were trying to set something up before COVID around getting into senior centers with being able to train people to use their devices. Do you have some training package already put together? Or
well, we have a presentation. Yeah, we have a presentation that we gave. I could certainly look into seeing if we actually have materials that are ready to be distributed to centers. I'm not sure on that front because the presentations we've given have been oral / via PowerPoint. I don't know if we have like a pamphlet.
The PowerPoint might be a start. I mean, even if we just had a guideline of to put into the hands of volunteers around. Erica's still there. I see her nodding at the top of her head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if we had some guidelines, I think that would be great. I want to begin to wrap up this 2-hour meeting that we've had. I really have enjoyed all of us getting together around this. And I would suggest that anybody that would like to work with me on next steps to email me with regard to putting together a guideline to train volunteers to be able to get that kind of training to individuals. And I guess I'll talk with Dan Noyes a little more around what can we do around connectivity in Vermont and the affordability. I know that it's a high priority on his mind. So any other last chance ideas for getting connected, getting together again? Again, if you would be interested in working with me on next steps, getting down to the nitty-gritty, email me. And we'll get a small group together to work on some plans.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Janet?
Yes, Janet.
I'm interested. I'm going to do some research and see if there's anything that exists now on best practices for doing remote technology training with older adults.
Great.
Bjorn may already have such research, but I always like to see what's out there and sort of get the lay of the land. So I'm going to do some quick research.
That would be wonderful, Janet. Janet, by the way, for folks who may not know, is from the University of Vermont Center on Aging. Sounds like a good job for you.
Janet, there's a group of college students who have been getting donations of devices and then giving them to medical practices and then teaching their patients. They've written an instruction manual and teaching the patients how to use the devices for telehealth visits. I can put you in touch with that group.
That would be great. I'm not aware of the group. I'm aware of a student group that was getting donations of iPods for the music and memory program, but that would be great.
Nope, I'll put you in touch with them.
Thank you.
Any other last thoughts or ideas from anyone? I'm hoping that Ryan, we'll still be able to connect with you, with Bjorn, Phil, and David. You've got all of the people through AARP that we can connect with. So we'll have a follow-up, Ryan and Bjorn. Bjorn's gone, but.
Yeah, please feel free to give my contact information to anybody who asks for it. Absolutely.
Great. Okay, great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for your spending time with us today to talk about this. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Janet.
Bye. Thank you.